Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business. For those of you who know me, you know I'm a big fan of Scotch and an even bigger fan of increasing my investment portfolio. So whether you're a connoisseur, an investor, or someone who just appreciates a good story, you're in for a treat. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of Scotch whisky cask investment. Joining me is a guest whose expertise lies at the intersection of financial savvy and the artistry of Scotch whisky. Taylor Costa Van Putten is the president of Braeburn Whisky. Taylor, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. Now, I have to ask you a little bit about your background because now you're in the whiskey business, but before this, you were in the art business. So tell me what you were doing in the fine art business.
Yes, I worked all around financial services as a broker, as well as a financial advisor and planner in the past. But had got my way into fine art investments in the multi-million-dollar art space, which is a extremely lucrative and attractive investment vehicle, especially if you're filthy rich. But these days, given my background in tangible assets, I've been asked to lead the introduction of Scotch whisky to America for the first time through Braeburn Whisky. So excited to be here.
Well, I can not think of a better subject or topic or certainly an asset than this. I feel like we should be having a glass of whiskey with us while we're doing this, and certainly I'm going to do that right after the show. But you said tangible assets, and I think that's a key phrase here that we want to talk about. So why are high net worth investors today showing a great inclination towards allocating more wealth to real, tangible, or alternative assets?
Yeah, it's been a hot button topic, especially in the last few years with some of the unpredictability and tumult that we've seen in financial markets. The reality is, if you look up surveys and data, interviews of both family offices, wealth managers, big financial institutions, and individual high net worth persons who manage their own money, by and large, a majority of folks with serious risk management needs are actually increasing their allocations to real, tangible assets, which in finance often are called alternative assets, which just means they're not stocks and bonds or cash. Now, the reality is tangible assets have always been appealing to the high net worth crowd, but these days, the main drivers of all the interest are going to be the concerns about inflation, which are very real. You know, tangible assets, especially consumer goods, are ones that can be liquidated in current day dollars, no matter what inflation is doing. And so that helps investors to keep up the value of their assets and their dollars. As well, very important about real and tangible assets is oftentimes they are either somewhat or totally illiquid, which is actually a benefit here because that illiquidity can mean that the movement or the dynamics of their marketplaces can be uncorrelated with other major asset classes, especially stocks and bonds. And so non-correlation is extremely important. The whole purpose of diversification is to ensure that not all parts of your portfolio are moving in the same direction at the same time, especially not all moving downward, tanking at the same direction at the same time or in velocity. So you always want to have part of your portfolio that is doing different things than the rest so that you've got a stable, consistent, relatively predictable core to help you maintain your wealth and avoid some of the drama that exists in other asset classes, especially like equity and stock.
Well, and a number of these assets, these tangible assets, really appreciate in great value and don't see declines like we might see with some traditional stocks and other investments that people are making. So for those who might be new to the concept, could you do me a favor and explain what exactly is Scotch whisky cask investment?
Absolutely. So in America, to be perfectly blunt with you, even though there's a lot of great Scotch whisky lovers, aficionados, guys like you who enjoy a great dram, a great glass, a great bottle of Scotch. I mean, even you had no idea that you can invest in whiskey. And the entire concept here is simply the fact that as you're well aware, Scotch whiskey and many whiskeys in the world needs to mature and age in wooden barrels. And so when this liquid is distilled, it's put into a wooden barrel, and it's going to sit in a warehouse in Scotland for anywhere from 3 to 50, 70, 80 plus years. And so every single year that whiskey gets a year older, it's actually maturing, it's changing. The spirit is becoming more complex. It's taking on the characteristics of the wood, of its environment, of the terroir, of the air, of the sea spray that's spatting up against the warehouses there on the Isle of Scotland. And so this increase in complexity also tends to mean that whiskey guys like you want that older whiskey. It's much more desirable and therefore can be significantly more valuable the older it gets. Now, also, the major thing that drives valuation increases of whiskey historically is going to be scarcity. Naturally, whiskey is designed to be drunk. And so if the whiskey is drunk, then there's not enough of it to go around. There's less of it every single day and year. So when you are looking at these whiskeys that are 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 plus years old, these are actually quite rare that any whiskey survives that long. And for that reason, people are willing to pay big bucks for that whiskey. So anyway, the whole idea here is simply to buy casks or barrels full of Scotch whiskey. We generally recommend for most people to buy relatively young whiskey barrels or even brand new, because that's their lowest price. You hold them as long as you possibly can as a mid to long-term investor. And then eventually you simply sell the barrel, the cask, on to its next owner, whether that's another investor, whether it's the distillery buying the liquid back from you, or what's called an independent bottler, whose job it is to bottle that liquid and put it on the shelves. So really, it's a financial transaction. It's all around barrels of whiskey that tend to increase in value significantly faster than most other asset classes that we've compared it to, according to the data. And treating it as a financial transaction that benefits your portfolio, benefits Scotch whiskey, or can even benefit you if you want to take some bottles of whiskey home.
Now, you mentioned storage. So I'm going to buy these casks. I'm going to make a minimum investment, say maybe 50, 100, 200, or whatever I want to be able to put. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands in this case. And I make those investments. Am I getting the barrels? Am I storing those casks? Or is this all taken care of for me?
Correct. Yeah. So entry point here, just in line with our regulated offering structure, as we're an SEC regulated issuer of securities, the entry point or minimum is going to be approximately $50,000 US to get into a handful of individual casks or barrels together. Now, as you mentioned, barrels take up physical space and somebody needs to take care of them. So where does that happen? Now, unfortunately, even though I know you would love to have a Scotch whiskey factory in your sitting room in Sioux Falls, you can't do that. So in Scotland, the law requires all Scotch whiskey to be born and distilled in Scotland. It's got to live and mature in government bonded warehouses in Scotland. And we also have private insurance to protect the investment in the spirit. And then it also has to be bottled in Scotland. You know, if you somehow were able to smuggle that barrel out, then it's no longer technically Scotch whiskey. And well, it's not really a valuable investment anymore if you can't even call it Scotch. So everything is taken care of very carefully with a warehouse management team and many levels of protection and oversight for your very precious liquid as it ages and matures. We take good care of it.
Now, you mentioned it's Scotch. We're talking about Scotch. Of course, we all know that all Scotch is whiskey. Not all whiskeys are Scotch. But is it only for Scotch, or are we talking about other whiskeys as well?
Yeah, good question. Now, realistically, many whiskeys around the world, American bourbon, Irish, Japanese, Indian whiskey, the vast majority of whiskeys on the planet are aged in barrels. And so some people absolutely do invest in and hold barrels of other countries' whiskey. There are a handful of ways you can get into American here in America or elsewhere. But as a business, Braeburn Whisky, my firm, focuses exclusively on Scotch whiskey and Japanese whiskey. Now, we're in these two categories because in our view, and the data tends to show, that they are most appropriate for more sophisticated and long-term investors who appreciate a history of outperforming other asset classes. And there's a few, reasons why we can confidently say that. One is Scotch whiskey is significantly, potentially a much longer term investment than other whiskeys out there. Realistically, most American whiskeys don't really have a market once they're more than, 7 to 10 years old. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants old American whiskey. It gets over oaked, and that's not a problem that exists in Scotch. Irish, there are some wonderful older whiskeys out there, but they're generally sold again in the 5, 7, 12-year range. And that's where most of the market is. Scotch whiskey has developed this incredible following over the last 50 to 100 years around matured, beautiful, old, and very rare whiskeys. And the market has demonstrated with billions of dollars chasing after these that people have extraordinary demand, and there's a very limited supply. So that's what makes it an attractive investment for us. The fact that it's a premium good, like you very well know, there's a segment of economic goods for all the econ majors out there called Veblen goods, which are luxury goods that buck traditional economic trends. Actually, the more expensive that the stuff gets, the greater the demand and the greater the perceived value. So, it's really just a way to participate in the luxury goods space, something that has significant supply and demand imbalances in recent years and likely going forward, and have virtually no upper limit on how long you can hold it, at least within a human lifetime. Some barrels go 50, 60, 70, 80 years. That's not what most of our investors are doing, but there are some great 80-year-old bottles out there.
That's a great way to be able to do it if you want to live that long. But I think it's unique that you could store these barrels, sell them back to the distillery, because, who would have thought of business? Now, most people would think about the business for a Scotch business. You're going to go to your bank. You're going to go to try to borrow money. You're going to tell people it's going to take you a year or two to build the distillery if you can get it, or buy one. Then you're going to, make the product, which is going to take you a while. And then you're going to put it in a cask or barrel for years and years. And most banks are going to laugh at you. So this gives an opportunity for the distilleries to be able to get investment into the product to make more product, right?
Absolutely. The whole model exists because of exactly what you're talking about. Building a Scotch whiskey premium single malt distillery is an extraordinarily challenging prospect. You need to spend millions of dollars to build the thing. You need to create a product that's exceptional, and then you need to wait for 10 years before you have a dime coming in. Now, what bank is going to take those payment terms and cross their fingers that they're going to get their return in 10 years? Very few. So that's why, especially relatively young distilleries, emerging distilleries, or distilleries that have major capital projects that they need, like building new stills or a visitor center, or just paying for these very expensive barley, water, and energy commodities that they need to run their spirits operations. These firms need capital to be able to thrive, and that is what whiskey cask investment is designed to do: is to exist as a bridge capital. And this system of bridge capital has existed as long as whiskey has been around, for 500 years. It's fairly well understood or known as a commodity or asset class, especially in the UK and many parts of Europe. But in America, because of the challenges of getting any investment, even alternatives and tangibles, available to the public in a regulatorily compliant way with all of our SEC rules, it's challenging. And so almost nobody, really nobody, has gone to the level that we have, that we're aware of, to do all the footwork to make this available to Americans in a secure investing environment with regulatory oversight, like our offering has through our broker-dealer distribution.
I think this is like the most unique side of crowdfunding that I've seen, at least the most high end of it. And the other piece of this is you can either sell this on the open market, sell it back to the distillery, as I mentioned, because I think a lot of people probably would do that. It's a safe bet, certainly, but you could go to the open market, from what I understand. But the other thing is you could bottle up and drink it, right? I mean, if that's the worst case scenario, you could certainly do that. I don't think that's the worst case scenario. I think I would tend to, and I am, buying my own and then buying that I'm going to invest in. So I want to bottle it myself because I want to drink it. I want my friends to be able to enjoy whatever I chose, whatever I think is the most premium whiskey out there. So you can do all of that or all of the above, right?
Absolutely. If you're somebody who owns 10 or 100 barrels, eventually, with the type of appreciation that we've historically seen, and may continue into the future with the asset class. Eventually, bottling some of it effectively pays for itself with the increase in value. So if you're a whiskey lover, you absolutely can and should take some whiskey out and put it in bottles. Some people will buy barrels on behalf of their children when they're born or when they're young. And so you can take bottles out when they graduate college, when they're 21, of course, and do 100 bottles for that very special occasion. And then 5 years later, when they're 26 and they're getting married, you get another 100 bottles out for your wedding guests, for the kid. And then eventually your kid starts and builds a successful business. You want to celebrate again, take the last 100 bottles out. Definitely, I encourage everybody who's a whiskey lover to consider making a absolute one-of-a-kind whiskey bottle. I can't wait to make a Jeffrey's dram. It's going to have your face on it. It's going to be probably one of the best whiskeys we've ever done.
I'll probably have to name it after my bridge here in South Dakota. I think that's a historic location. So we'll do something that. Now, Taylor, we were talking about, what to do and what you're getting, but who is this investment best for? And who's the kind of person that's doing it? Can anybody do this? Do you have to be a qualified investor? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, good question. The world of alternative assets is pretty regulated in terms of who is allowed to participate. And it's not our rules. It is the Securities and Exchange Commission. But as we're a private off-exchange investment, according to the Securities and Exchange Commission, we can only offer this asset class to what are called accredited investors. Now, an accredited investor is not some hard to achieve certification. You don't have to go give your firstborn to any government office or anything like that. It's really just financial qualification. So most people will be qualified through either income or net worth or certain finance professionals. So to qualify as an accredited investor, a person can either be earning $200,000 in income personally or $300,000 a year jointly together with their spouse, or a person can have a net worth of $1 million plus, excluding the residence in which they live, their primary residence. Or certain financial industry professionals licensed as a broker or financial advisor in some cases might also be eligible. If you're not sure, Jeffrey will put a QR code down here and a link to our website where you can apply and check your qualification. I'm always happy to talk and see if there's a way for you to participate. Now, once you meet the very, very basic requirements, we are a little bit selective about who we work with. And that's because we naturally only want to have people come on board that are excited about the asset class, but can really benefit from it. So two things we primarily will always ask for and look for. Are you somebody who has a mid to long-term outlook in their investments? Let's be very clear. Nobody day trades barrels full of whiskey. It doesn't happen. When you buy a barrel or when a barrel is created, it is a 10 to 15 to 30-year project, statistically speaking. So, at the bare minimum, if you want to benefit from this and participate and see the stability that it can provide to a portfolio, we really say you should be doing this for 5 years plus. There's no lockups. There's no handcuffs. We're not going to force you to hold it. But tangible assets tend to be for mid to long-term investments, and we stick to that. Now, secondly, real or tangible assets are particularly helpful for people that are overweight or maybe entirely invested in more liquid, more volatile, and more traditional assets. And when I say that, I mean if you've got a heavy stock allocation, heavy bond allocation, heavy in cash right now, all of these asset classes are absolutely getting beat up by volatility. And upside, downside unpredictability. So whiskey is a way to sock away 5 to 10% of your portfolio in something that you really don't have to think about or worry about for 5, 10, 15 plus years and emerge on the other side excited about the results that you've seen and how it's been able to be a safe harbor in your portfolio. And lastly, to be honest with you, I think the investors that I work with here and the people that inquire and come on board are some of the most interesting and adventurous people that I meet. You have to be an interesting person to make interesting investments, and people who love whiskey or people that are just excited to participate in an artisanal product and benefiting small family businesses in the premium whiskey business in Scotland and having their investment dollars actually go and do some serious good and making incredible whiskey for the world. those are the people that tend to be the most excited and most eligible to come on board. And, lastly, this background here that you're looking at is not a fake Zoom background or anything. This is the New York City Braeburn Whisky Vault, which is an exclusive members only club and lounge that we love to pour whiskeys for, really only for our investors. And people who love whiskey are absolutely invited to come and join us for a dram once they've come on board and gotten invested with their first cask. So people who want to share and enjoy whiskey here with us in New York are some of our favorite people.
And I found that most people who do drink premium whiskeys are some of the best people in the world. Great conversation. You might not agree with them all the time, but you'll certainly have an interesting time. And it's been an interesting time with you, Taylor. Thanks so much for being with us right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV.
Thanks so much, Jeff. We're going to look forward to seeing you here soon.
Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about what I learned. And I'll tell you what I learned is time. Good things come with time, and that's certainly the case when it comes to whiskey. And I also like to learn about investments, that even if things aren't the greatest for the financial side, which in this case they seem to be, I can always drink the investment. And that's what I learned right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett, right here on C-Suite TV and C-Suite Radio.
Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. We're here with Brandon Steiner. He is the author of Living on Purpose, Stories about Faith, Fortune, and Fitness that can lead you to an extraordinary life. It's wonderful to have you with us, Brandon.
Thank you, Taryn. Great to be here.
And for all of our sports fans out there, this is an exciting moment. I mean, if you know anything about the world of sports, Steiner is synonymous with success in the sports world. So thanks for being here.
Well, thank you. I mean, this book is a little more about significance than success, and it definitely slides a little bit away from the typical sports stuff that I've written about in my other books.
True. We're going to get into that. Right off the top, you say this book is about faith, fortune, and fitness, but not in the way you might think. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think, you grow up, you hope you can have a little success, but unfortunately, there's so much focus on the financial success, the money grab, I call it in the book. And, faith, fortune, and fitness sometimes usually takes a back seat. Mm-hmm. And this book is really about how you could do more good. Most people want to do well,
right,
and then they'll do good.
Okay.
Let me just finish this month out, then I'll get to the gym, or I'll lose weight, or I'll have a catch with my kid, or I'll donate that money to charity after I obtain a little more wealth. But I think the goal really in this book is to show that, when you do good, it'll lead you to doing well. It's a byproduct of it. And those other pillars, you don't need work-life balance, because that's BS.
Okay. Is it?
I mean, well, if you see somebody with work-life balance, that's somebody usually wants to shoot themselves out of boredom.
Right.
Right. I mean, but you have to have life. You have to have respect for life balance.
Okay.
You got to respect the other pillars, and it's something that I didn't do. And in this book, I talk about some of the disrespect that I have for some of the other pillars, and how I gained that respect back, and how I found it. And where I went to go get the help.
It's a fascinating read because it's just so unique, and there's so many quotes. I wish we had time to mention every quote, but you say you need the right purpose so you end up where you want to be and not way off course, which is where you found yourself in the year 2002. So let's talk about that year. Where did you find yourself? What course were you on, and where did you realize you needed to be?
Well, I grew up a very poor kid in Brooklyn. Literally, welfare, not a whole lot, and things were tough. And here I am standing in front of this company that bought my company with the biggest check I ever thought. Never had to work another day the rest of my life.
Just tell everybody what company is that, just in case people are.
Well, we sold our company, Omnicom, and my wife and I are on Madison Avenue high-fiving because it was a moment of high level of success. And I realized I'd gotten up to the top of the ladder. But by the time I got home, I realized that ladder was on very wobbly ground.
And it was leaning on the wrong wall. You mentioned something
maybe
like
leaning
that.
on the wrong. Yeah. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
maybe a little slow to climb the ladder because you want to make sure that the ladder you're climbing is against the right building.
Right.
And you want to make sure it's on solid ground.
Okay.
And I felt financially, just booming, but then, emotionally, physically, my health, spiritually, and my connection to my family, I felt bankrupt.
Interesting.
And this is a book that talks about how I found that road to go get those other pillars. As strong as I was financially, I want to be just as strong with my wife, with my kids, with my health. And I certainly wasn't at that point. I think there's a lot of people that are more, you think about it, you spent all this time, Taryn, you spent all this time when you're younger learning how to be a doctor, a lawyer, and then you get mentors, you read books how to do it, but you don't read a book how to become a better wife or husband, how to be a better daughter or son, how to be a better friend.
I don't know if anyone's cracked the code on that.
Yeah, I mean, but you got to first start by putting the time in to at least want to learn and want to be as curious and care about those pillars as much as you care about making the money grab.
True, about as much as we care as Americans, our education and getting ahead and just climbing that
yeah, if you're
ladder.
30, you've put in 90% of your time on how to go get ahead in business, get the promotion, make more money.
Right.
Maybe you spend 5 or 10% on your health, fitness, family, faith.
Right.
And that's crazy.
But
that's crazy.
With all due respect, Brandon, I mean, you grow up, you learn this idea that, you want to provide one day for yourself, for a family, what have you. So you can understand kind of the impetus to succeed in a professional capacity.
I understand, but it's insane because I would say to anyone, it's like, you don't think you'd be more productive at work if you were sleeping better, eating right, exercising often? You'd even be even more successful at work? Of course you would.
True.
And if you had more faith, I mean, faith is such a underlying common denominator behind success. If you're faithful and you have a strong spiritual connection, that's what gives you the strength when things get off track.
Right.
So imagine you don't even have that to go fight that fight every day. You need to go fight to win in business.
I do want to mention
that's the book, like really at the end.
In a
how do you
nutshell.
do good, which have the faith and have the purpose that will enable you to do well?
Right. I do want to mention, so Steiner Sports, it's a sports memorabilia company that you sold? Was that
I mean, Steiner Sports was, the first kind of company of its kind, one of the biggest still in the world. We market athletes for companies to help them grow their business. And then we also sell licensed collectibles of all different players, from Muhammad Ali, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Eli Manning. I mean, there's,
And so you kind of happened upon it, right? It was, you were on a train, and it kind of just, there was a light bulb moment.
Well, I don't think anything great in my life has happened without a purpose. And sometimes it's okay to have the money grab as a purpose.
Right.
It's okay to say, I just need to make a hell of a lot of money.
Right.
So for me, I'm on this train. My mom had just died, and I was really bummed. And all I want to do is get off this damn train. And when you have a purpose, like saying, I need to make some money to go buy a car. So I'm looking down, I see on the newspaper a picture of Mark Messier holding a Stanley Cup.
Right.
I'm like, wow, I bet you I could sell. Now, I remember I didn't have a collectible company at this point, 1994.
Right.
I'm just on the Metro North, going into New York City from Scarsdale on a stupid, crowded train. This guy's got his shoes off, another one's eating some disgusting food. I'm like, I got to get off this train.
Right.
And I said, I could sell 17,000 of those photos if I could track Mark Messier down and have him sign it. We did it. We won the Stanley Cup, Mark Messier.
Yeah.
And I just took me about 4 months. I tracked Mark down. He was my first guy that I signed to start Steiner Collectibles.
Wow.
So people always say, Brian, that's genius. How'd you start Steiner Collectibles? I'm like, something, I wasn't that smart. I had a purpose, and I wanted to get off the damn train.
Yeah.
And I got off that damn train, and shortly, about 6 months later, I bought my first brand new car, and I was driving to and from work on my terms.
Not in the train anymore.
Not on the train anymore.
So we talk about these pillars, and what you were saying is you had all this money, but you were emotionally bankrupt. Looking back at your story, do you think you would have had the foresight to realize how important all these other things were, family, fitness, faith, if you didn't have the fortune? I mean, you had so you were lucky enough to have, be able to provide financially, and then you could focus on other things. But there are people that might say, yeah, sure, Brandon, you were able to focus on all these others because you had money in the bank. You could spend money on your health and your fitness. I mean, is fortune a prerequisite for all these other pillars?
It's absolutely not. I wish that somebody would have explained it to me the way I try to explain it in this book. Because not only for people that are in their late 40s that are feeling the way I was feeling, where they've accomplished a lot, but then the other pillars are bankrupt. But how you prepare, I always say, you dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Plan for the health, plan for the life you want, not the job and the life you have now. And I wish I would have planned a little bit better on my health. I mean, I just disregarded it. I disrespected it.
Yeah.
So I don't feel I needed that. And by the way, as we're talking about the F words, forgiveness. Disappointment is a big thing I talk about in the book, is one of the biggest holdbacks. I always say, like, we're all Superman. Superwomen, of course, but there's kryptonite.
Right.
And kryptonite is disappointment. And disappointment comes from what your mind feels, your forecast. I see on Wall Street, they forecast $1 billion profit for this quarter, and they come up with 800 million, and it's disappointment on the street, and the stock goes down. I'm like, you made $800 million!
You lose
and I say to myself, you think about where your head goes when you have disappointment, which is what you thought the world should have provided, and then there's what the world actually did provide. That gap is disappointment.
Right.
And the problem is when you let disappointments linger inside you. Some guy broke up with you. Oh my God, that was 20 years ago. But every time you have you still think that maybe it's going to happen again.
Yeah, it sticks with you, yeah.
Some boss fired you. Now all bosses are bad. And you've got to resolve those disappointments. I always say you got to trade your expectations in for appreciations. You've got to resolve everything that's happened, particularly the bad stuff. Is where you've grown the most, learned the most. And if you can get resolution to that, find forgiveness, in some cases maybe even mercy. You know, a person that doesn't deserve your forgiveness, but it's going to get it anyway. That's how you can get the road clear to real, true, extraordinary life. And you do it you don't realize the disappointments that linger around inside you that will hold you back. It's kryptonite. And a big part of having purpose and being able to find the biggest purpose, whether it's in any of the pillars, is by resolving those disappointments. It sets your mind free for the big dream. The big opportunity in any aspect, whether you want to have the big dream with your family, whether you want to have the big dream for the money grab. I'm good with the money grab. It's just that don't disrespect the other pillars. And if you don't have a road that's clear, it's tough to get there.
Now you talk about, you talked a little bit about faith. You talk about faith versus fear and that distinction there. And what I found interesting is you read faith, you think it's something to do with God or a spiritual, in a spiritual sort of context. But as I was reading the book, it's not just about God. It's maybe faith in yourself, faith in a cause, faith in a purpose. So I like that. It's like we just kind of categorize faith, but you delve a little deeper.
Well, you can't have faith and fear at the same time, so you got to choose one. And to be honest with you, I had no faith. I mean, I didn't even understand what faith was. So that's just horrible. That's terrible to not have real faith. And when you have a childhood where your dad leaves at 4, he dies when he's 11, and you're at food banks getting food, or it's rough. And so you have a tendency to think, well, something bad's going to just around the corner, it's going to happen, or whatever your story is. That was what my story was. So I think understanding faith and spending some time finding faith can be a tremendous strength as you get into the dogfight, as you get into these battles, whether it be for your health, to have a better marriage. You need to have faith. And I just talk about how I found it, and I found it with a couple of athletes that I work with, and just talking it through and finding a spiritual connection that I can rely on when things get a little bit tough.
Right. Well, it's interesting though about your stories. A lot of people would just be happy with, you hit the jackpot, you're financially secure, you have it made, life is great. But what was the moment for you where you realized, all right, I have all this money, but we mentioned earlier, but I'm emotionally bankrupt. Like you were bankrupt in so many other facets of your life. What made you even have that insight to realize that you were empty in those situations and you needed to make a change? Why? A lot of people would say, it sounds like a lot of work. Why don't you just move to an island and drink pina coladas?
I hear it every day, and I've heard it every day since I'm 40 when I had this great opportunity. But it's interesting. What you're saying is what a lot of people think. They think that they'll work really hard so they could do nothing. And that's just, I don't see that for me.
You weren't happy with all this
I wasn't, not at all. I'm more importantly not satisfied. And also, I didn't want just success. I wanted significance. And I think the most important thing is the joy that I started to realize what you get from helping others. And it's not just because I had the big money grab and I had a bunch of money in the bank. I've always enjoyed helping others and doing a lot of charity work. But I found even more joy, far greater than signing with the New York Yankees and signing with all these different players, of just helping someone, especially, who would you help if you knew that person wouldn't be able to help you back?
Right.
And the joy that I was able to receive from really just starting to do good. And I made a commitment in saying, listen, I'm going to spend a part of my day, if I'm going to keep working, to helping others. unconditionally, just trying to find some good I could do. And I just was overwhelmed with how much joy I found from that, of helping others. My wife was always like, you got to find a hobby. I'm like, my hobby is helping people.
That's great.
And the joy I got from that, and finding my faith, having a renewed was amazing, because it moved me away from fear. No matter how much money you have, you're afraid you're going to die, you're afraid you're going to get sick, afraid you're going to go broke. Because I made all this money, but any moment I can go broke again. So I had that fear. When you grow up as poor as I did, no matter how much money you have, I still open up that refrigerator. I'm like, wow, oh God, there's food in this refrigerator, thank God. So, I found a lot. And, a chapter in this book that I'm real proud of, it got whacked in my first 2 books, was about parenting.
Okay.
Because I see so many successful people, but how successful are you when your kids aren't great and your kids aren't successful? So I went on this tear, and one of the reasons why the pod and my blog have 450,000 people that read my blog. Amazing. And I'm half illiterate. So I always feel like anything's doable. But I went on this mad tear to go interview as many people as I could about parenting. Right. I always wanted to have my distinct style about it, but I knew, I was like, Brandon, you're not that good a parent. You could be better. Okay. And I got great tips, and I shared it in this chapter, and some of them were vulnerable about how maybe I really didn't do as good a job as I thought I was doing as a parent. I learned to be a better parent. And also same thing as being a spouse. You think just because you make a lot of money, you're a provider, they automatically, who's a better husband than me? And you get home, it's like foreplay starts when you unload the dishwasher, man. It's like, you're just a third-class citizen like everyone else, clean up that dog poop over there, or change the diapers or whatever. And you lose sight of that, especially when you have a lot of success in the workplace. And I talk about that transformation, about getting away from that, getting yourself back grounded again, so you can get back with your family on normal terms.
I love that, because you laid it out, so clearly, in that a lot of people feel that way. Spouses, whether you're, husband or a woman or a wife as the breadwinner, sort of, I have a roof over their heads. I provide, I'm giving them a great life. But that doesn't equate to being a great father or husband or a wife, and make that distinction. People think financial security is everything.
You get so driven about the financial security. Right. You don't realize that every dinner, everywhere you are, all you're doing is talking about that business and the financial security you have, and your family gets tired of it. It was hard for me to hear it, because I was so in love with the fact of what I was able to accomplish. But your family gets tired of hearing about Steiner and about the sports stuff. They want to talk about what they want to talk about, what the family wants to talk about. And you need to be present to listen. And there's a transformation that goes along with that basically says, hey, money's good, money's important, it's not everything.
Not everything, right. So is that why you put this in print? Is that why you didn't have to write this book? Like you said, you have plenty of money.
I see so many. I just see so many of my friends in their 40s that just are not prepared for what is about to happen. Okay. I think we're all living a lot longer, but they're not prepared physically. They're not changing their diets. They don't recognize the sleep. They're working till 11:15 and then going to sleep and wondering why their memory's starting to go, or why they're not on top of their game. You have to adjust. And I look at it like a basketball and football game. It's like, if you're at halftime when you're in your 40s, you need to go in the locker room, look at what's working, look at what's not working, and make adjustments, and sometimes serious adjustments to your diet, to how much you're working, where you're working, who you're working with. And I did it. I'm proud that I did. I'm proud that I would say survival of the fittest? No. Survival of the flexible. Can you change and alter your situation and adapt? And it's sad that I see so many of my friends that have done well can't adapt. They can't make that adjustment at home, or they can't make that adjustment at work, so they can be vibrant and effective. And that's the purpose of the book. How do you go kick butt for the next 40 years when you turn 40? How do you go have another great 40 years?
So is this for someone in midlife, or is this for all ages?
I think this is really important for somebody even in their 30s to read, because you can prepare for what you're about to get into. It doesn't catch you by surprise like it did for me. Right. But certainly if you're in your 40s, and you're feeling a little stuck, and you're kind of feeling a little bored, and you're not really sure how to reset, this book really puts a lot of stuff in play. And it's not a how-to, it's what I did, so you can kind of see somebody like myself who is completely transparent, from a therapist to problems at home, problems with my kids, problems at work. I elaborate on the failures as much as I do on the success in the book, because I wanted people to know it's real. And I think that we're all going through a lot of the same stuff.
Sure, yeah. Would you say it's a self-help book, or not really?
I'd say it's a real help book. It's a book that, it's about getting up, even if you've messed up. It's like you can still get up. It's not too late. The paint's not dry. Take your hand off the control, then hit delete. So you're in your 40s. You got plenty of run left in you.
Exactly.
And that's why I feel like, I've made some money, but I got plenty of run left in me. I feel like I could still accomplish a lot, do a lot. And why can't I dream like a 20-year-old? Why do we get dreaming characterized as a young person's sport?
Completely.
So, I really preach a lot about that, about how I started regaining my dreaming.
No
again.
age limit.
No age limit. And also, moving to my discomfort zone is not always easy as you get older. Like I'm stuck in my ways. Why?
Why? It's kind of exciting. It's new. It's fresh.
Yeah. So this book was as therapeutic for me as I hope for other people. I tell some really good sports stories in there too about some athletes that you would think on the highest level of the mountain that are going through the same stuff that we're going through.
Right. We're all human.
And so it makes the book kind of real. I like to think this book is, if you're somebody that wants to reset, wants to go further, a lot of people hit greatness. I'm like, that's great. But can you be extraordinary?
Right.
Can you go to extraordinary? Was that special? Success for significance.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary book. And I love the fact that you're not pushing an agenda. You're not selling anything. You're talking about a guy like yourself who's reached the pinnacle of success, but there's still more to work on. I mean, like everything you just said, I couldn't have put it better myself. And I just want to say congratulations, because the book is different. Now, I've read a lot of books on the show, but it moves so quickly. And like you said, no matter, you mentioned the NBA players, they've reached the top of their crafts, but they still have the same problems that people working in retail.
The joy is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? And what do you do with that success? And that's where the joy comes in, especially when you can help others with it.
Exactly.
It's amazing. I hate for people to cheat themselves out and miss that part of it.
Exactly. And there's so much to explore and open your eyes to. Will there be another book? Does it continue?
I've got a couple other ones. One of my books that I've been really thinking hard about is about I coach Little League. I love Little League. I got so into it, and how Little League is so comparable to running a business, about the caring and about how you can set your Little League team up to win.
Right.
And it's about this consultant that comes and sees me that's struggling with this company that she has. And she's not sure what to do with it, and she thinks that I'm going to hook them up as a sponsor of the Yankees. And instead I take it to this Little League field in Scarsdale, and I show her basically how I run my Little League team for the week. And it kind of completely refocuses how she's going to take this company and make it successful with the rhymes and reasons of how I run a Little League team of 10-year-olds.
Amazing. Well, you have a lot of anecdotes. We look forward to hearing them, and congratulations on the book. It's extraordinary. And thanks for being here, Brandon.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website, csweetbookclub.com, c-sweetbookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
Welcome to C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg. From love in the digital age to the dark side of personal transformation, there's not a topic that John Burgos, founder and host of the Beyond the Ordinary show, is afraid to tackle. He's here today to weigh in on a few weighty topics. Welcome, John.
It's great to be here, Greg. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And first of all, tell me about the Beyond the Ordinary show. How did it all come about?
It came about as my own kind of awakening to consciousness started to really evolve. And so I wanted to share what I was learning with as many people as possible. So I started Beyond the Ordinary show and started collaborating with other people in the personal development field. And it's just grown where we've had millions of people listening to the show already, and we're really making an impact on consciousness.
And like I said, you're not shy when it comes to taking on controversial topics. For example, the rise of the feminine revolution, and on the flip side, the empathic masculine. So the battle of the sexes is being twisted. Can you straighten it out for me?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to stop being shy about topics. And so the rise of the feminine and the empowerment and the acknowledging what the feminine aspects, the feminine population is embracing, we have to celebrate that. And similarly, this empathic masculine that's on the rise, the change of the energies and how we're creating in different ways and being in a relationship with that is something that has to be celebrated as well. So I believe that there's a merging happening, but we have to get away from the polarity that's causing so much separation between the two.
And another subject you discuss is the dark side of personal and spiritual transformation. This doesn't sound as pretty. Can you talk about it?
No, it's a wave. In personal transformation, you're going to go into a dark side and into a shadow, and you should expect that. As we attune to things that we put on the shelf, our emotions, our fears, the things that we like to avoid, they're going to come up. And so it's just be prepared through the personal transformation, but the other side of it is worth the ride.
And another very personal topic that you tackle on the show is new age sex. So how do you approach this on the show?
Well, again, we can't be shy about certain topics. So I like to talk about things that have been kept in the dark for way too long. So we'll address any issue that comes up. We'll ground it into everyday reality, but we'll also take it into a higher consciousness experience, and we'll bring in experientials. We'll have people go through somatic experiences. And again, we'll drop in and really talk about what's really going on instead of just kind of skirting around it.
And it's not just relationships that you discuss on this show, or genders or gender-specific items. You also talk about environmental issues like global warming, but you approach it from a different angle, correct?
I do approach it from a different angle. I see it all as a reflection of what's going on in each individual person, what we're all growing through and evolving through consciously. So what we're witnessing happening in the world, it's happening within us. And so when we can attune to that and create a healing for it and a solution within ourselves, then we can see more clearly the solutions that are available for the environment. So we become the change that we've been looking for.
Finally, how does COVID mix into all this? And what is your outlook for the post-COVID era? How should we navigate it?
Well, the COVID crisis is really having us reflect on different emotions and experiences, and we're getting into a psyche, again, that we've been avoiding for a long time. So COVID is stimulating a wave of reaction that is promoting change. When we're in anger, we're going to want to change something. When we're in fear, we're going to want to change that situation. So post-COVID, there's new solutions coming in. I actually see it as a beautiful opportunity to create new structures from foundations that have been crumbling for a long time.
All right, well, thanks a lot, John, for coming on to talk about it. Thank you for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg.